The airport was a monument to movement, a world of relentless motion and indifferent noise. Yet in that instant, everything seemed to stop for Robert Ellison. The overhead lights flickered off the polished tile, reflecting his reflection. A weary man in a threadbare jacket, his age written in deep lines in the rigid set of his jaw. He clutched a creased first-class boarding pass, eyes locked with the gate agent who, with the practiced detachment of 1,000 apologies, slid a new ticket across the counter. As Robert waited, the overhead announcement droned on, and he realized for the first time that the world could be so cold, even in a place built for departures and arrivals. He'd survived war, but never this kind of public dismissal. "I'm sorry, sir. Your seat's been reassigned. Please proceed to economy." A ripple of curiosity moved through the crowd. Then, sharper, a voice from the velvet rope, a sharp-suited VIP, sunglasses perched arrogantly on his head, barked, "You don't belong here. This seat's for someone who actually matters." Laughter bubbled from the line behind, the kind that stings and stains. Someone pulled out a phone. A camera flashed. No one looked Robert in the eye. For a moment, time froze, not from fear, but from the deep ache of being invisible in the land he'd once protected. In that instant, humiliation hung in the air, thick and choking. Is respect just a privilege for the powerful? Or does it belong to those who gave everything long before anyone was watching? Ever seen a moment like this? Leave your comment and subscribe if you believe these stories deserve to be heard. Robert Ellison had always been a man of few words, his dignity worn like an old medal, polished not by pride, but by memory. He was 86 now, his posture stooped but his spirit unbroken, a survivor of wars both public and private. The news rarely mentioned his name, though his photograph, much younger, in uniform, a flicker of fire in his eyes, was tucked inside a wallet that had crossed oceans, deserts, and decades. His home was quiet now, every wall echoing memories of Marion's laughter. It was their granddaughter Emily, young and unshakable, who pulled him back into the world each Sunday, bringing laughter, groceries, and stories from the base hospital where she now served. Emily, who had spent her own savings to book the ticket, first class no less, so her grandfather could travel to the national ceremony for unsung heroes. The invitation had arrived months before. Cream-colored paper, gold-embossed seal, the kind of formality Robert had never trusted. Still, he kept his promise to Marion, who, on her last lucid day, had whispered, "Show up, Robert. Remind them what honor looks like, for the men who didn't make it home." He'd said yes for her, for Emily, for all the voices lost somewhere in the churn of history. Glenford International was not a place for sentiment. It was a gleaming temple to efficiency, rows of kiosks, faceless announcements, and an endless churn of travelers, each absorbed in their own destination. Technology ruled here, but warmth was in short supply. Robert's journey through the terminal was slow and deliberate, every step a negotiation with old wounds and the stubborn ache that never quite left his back. As he waited in the bustling crowd, Robert's mind drifted to the war, to the field hospital at night, the way hope clung to every breath, how loss felt like a secret pact between men who would never meet again. The medal of valor he kept wasn't for display, but for nights he'd made choices that still haunted him. His reason for being here was simple. He wanted to arrive in Washington, D.C. on time, dignified, carrying not just his own name, but the memory of those left behind. He did not crave attention nor pity. All he ever wanted, then and now, was for someone, anyone, to remember the price of peace. Emily's call had been clear, bright with hope. "Grandpa, you'll be comfortable this time. You deserve it. This is for everyone you saved." Robert had only nodded, his eyes prickling with a gratitude too deep for words. He was traveling for her, for Marion, and for the faces that visited him at night in dreams, waiting quietly to be remembered. Now, ticket crushed in his hand, he stood at the mercy of strangers, caught between the indifferent churn of the present and the unyielding weight of the past. The line at the airline service desk was long and unmoving, a knot of travelers pressed by time and frustration. Robert shuffled forward, his hands trembling not from age but from the kind of anger that simmers quietly, the kind only the overlooked and the forgotten truly know. He offered his ticket to the young woman behind the counter, her nails clicking over a keyboard, face expressionless. She didn't look up. "There's been a change," she said, voice flat. "You're in economy, row 34, seat B." Robert tried to explain. "My granddaughter booked first class. There must be a mistake. I have a confirmation." But she was already shaking her head, eyes scanning the next passenger. "All upgrades are handled by the system. Next, please." He felt the burn of embarrassment as people behind him sighed and shifted, some whispering impatiently. He stepped aside, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Please, I'm traveling for a ceremony." But the words were swallowed by the noise. No one cared. No one saw the old service medals pinned discreetly on his lapel. They saw only another obstacle in their way. Still, Robert pressed on. He approached a second agent, hoping for a trace of empathy, but was met with a curt, "Sir, if you continue to block the line, I'll have to call security." The security guard, at first stern, paused as he glanced at the small pin on Robert's lapel. His voice softened. "Thank you for your service, sir. I'm sorry it's come to this." He did not resist as the guard, now more gentle, led him away. Behind him, a younger man in a designer jacket made a show of rolling his eyes. "That's what happens when you try to cheat the system," he muttered, loud enough for a dozen people to hear. A few phones rose, catching Robert's hunched shoulders as he was gently, but firmly, escorted away. The weight of 1,000 silent judgments pressed in, a low hum of collective apathy. Within minutes, someone uploaded the video captioned, entitled "Old Man Tries to Cut Line, Gets What He Deserves." Robert sat alone on a metal bench, exiled from the crowd that flowed on around him. His hands folded the boarding pass until the paper nearly tore, the motion a nervous ritual as he tried to steady his breathing. People passed, a few glancing his way, but their eyes quickly flicked elsewhere. In this world of endless motion, a solitary old man was less than invisible. He was in the way. His phone buzzed, a message from Emily. "Grandpa, I hope you're comfortable. Call me if you need anything, okay?" He hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. He couldn't bring himself to tell her what had happened. She believed in the kindness of strangers. He was learning all over again how sharp the world could be. A group of teenagers paused nearby, staring at their phones. One of them snickered and nudged another. On Robert's screen, the video of his humiliation had already begun to gather views and mocking comments. "Boomers LOL. Why do they always think they're special? If he's really some war hero, where's the proof?" He blinked hard, willing himself not to care. But the ache was real, blooming in his chest in a way no bullet or shrapnel ever had. He had faced fire, but the coldness of the indifferent was something else entirely. A shadow fell across his lap. He looked up. A little girl, maybe 7, with unruly braids and a faded pink backpack, stood before him. Her mother, watching nervously from a few steps away, mouthed an apology, but the girl ignored it. She reached into her bag and drew out a piece of stiff blue construction paper, cut into the shape of a star. "It's for you," she said softly, pressing the badge into his weathered hand. "My teacher says heroes should always have stars, and I saw your medals. My brother is in the army." Robert tried to speak, but his throat closed. He managed a smile, tears prickling at the corners of his eyes as the girl darted back to her mother, who mouthed, "Thank you," before hustling her daughter away. Emily's message flashed on his phone. "Grandpa, everything okay? You know I'm so proud of you, right?" He almost replied, but stopped. No words could capture this ache. A young security guard, the same one who had escorted Robert earlier, lingered nearby. He approached, uncertain. "Sir, I saw that video online. I know you didn't mean any trouble," Emily called, her voice shaking with both pride and worry. "Grandpa, your name is everywhere. People are talking about you. Are you okay?" He paused. He had never wanted this kind of attention, never wanted to become a spectacle. But something in him knew this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all the quiet sacrifices, all the times the world looked away. Maybe this was his chance to remind them. Maybe just this once. The world was finally listening. Night fell over Glenford International, the terminal buzzing with more energy than usual. Screens in the waiting area flashed with news alerts. Local war hero mistreated at airport, social media erupts. Anchors debated the clip's meaning, pundits dissected every frame, and hashtags stormed the trending charts. Robert sat quietly, his world reduced to the hard bench beneath him, the handmade badge still pressed in his palm. He didn't seek revenge. He'd known humiliation before, in battlefields and boardrooms. But this time, something felt different. The air vibrated with expectation, the murmur of a crowd who sensed a reckoning was coming. It began with a ripple of commotion at the far end of the terminal. Cameras swiveled, flashes fired. The airline's CEO, a woman with a sharp suit and the look of someone used to control, strode briskly toward the gate, flanked by nervous assistants and a pair of uniformed veterans from a local honor guard. The crowd parted, whispers cascading from person to person. "That's her. She's really here. Is that for the old soldier? He's still here. Look." She approached Robert and knelt, not in performative show, but in a genuine act of humility. Her voice, amplified by the cluster of microphones, rang clear. "Colonel Ellison, on behalf of our company, I am deeply sorry. We failed you. We failed every veteran who deserves honor, not humiliation. This will not stand." The terminal, used to monotony, now hung on every word. Travelers filmed, staff watched, and somewhere in the crowd, the little girl's mother dabbed her eyes. The CEO continued, "You will have your rightful seat, not just today, but whenever you travel with us. And for every veteran, our policy will change, starting now." She turned to Robert. "Colonel, what would you wish for? So this never happens again?" Robert quietly, "See us. Don't let memory become a stranger." A wave of applause surged, not polite but thunderous, echoing along the glass walls. "I just wanted to say, thank you for your service." His words were awkward but sincere. The world forgets, but not everyone does. The kindness was small, almost invisible next to the tidal wave of scorn, but it was real. As the little girl's badge warmed in his palm, someone else standing nearby caught the moment on camera. A quick photo, a few seconds of genuine grace. It was enough. enough for the tide to begin to turn. It happened almost without warning. One clip against another, two stories unfolding side by side. The video of Robert being escorted away continued to rack up thousands of views. The comment section, a flood of sarcasm and judgment. But then, late that afternoon, a new post began to circulate. A still shot of the little girl handing Robert her homemade badge, his wrinkled hand trembling as he accepted it. The caption was simple. Not all heroes wear uniforms anymore, but some still notice. The moment caught fire. It was retweeted, reshared, and discussed in military forums and local Facebook groups. A veteran, watching from across the country, added context in the comments. "That's Colonel Robert Ellison. He saved lives in the Quezon evacuation. He never asked for attention. He deserves more than this." Suddenly, the story changed. The cruel hashtags were met by a flood of new ones. Justice for Ellison. Honor our veterans. Heroes deserve respect. News outlets picked up the debate. Elderly war hero publicly shamed at Glenford International. Was it justified? Online, Robert's humiliation was now ammunition for outrage, and his quiet dignity became a rallying cry. At the airport, Robert had no idea any of this was happening. He watched as people passed, glancing at their phones, faces changing from boredom to surprise to something closer to shame. The security guard who had once seemed uncertain now approached with newfound confidence, offering a coffee and a wordless nod of respect. He felt the difference in the air, a current of something building, a sense that he was no longer utterly alone. Travelers began to stop, offering a nod, a handshake, or even a silent salute. The clerk from the newsstand, a veteran herself, slipped him a candy bar with his change and whispered, "I saw the video. Thank you, Colonel." By evening, as his flight delay stretched on, Robert's phone buzzed with messages. Strangers and old friends, comrades from long ago, all reaching out. Robert's hands shook. The old badge clutched tightly as the CEO offered her hand. The uniformed veterans saluted. For a moment, time bent. Decades of silence, all the forgotten faces, the lonely journeys. They pressed forward, seen and honored, if only for a heartbeat. But the reckoning wasn't limited to words. The CEO turned to face the cameras, now broadcasting live to millions, and made it clear. Effective immediately, every veteran traveling with our airline will be treated with the dignity they have earned. We are establishing a hero's desk at every major airport and launching a foundation to support veteran travel. Colonel Ellison's experience will never be repeated. Not in our company, and I hope, not in this country. She glanced at Robert, her voice softening. "If there's anything we can do for you now, Colonel, anything at all, please let us know." Robert rose with quiet dignity, hands shaking but head held high. He cleared his throat, the crowd falling silent at his first words. "I didn't come here for a spectacle. I came because I gave my word. To my wife, to my granddaughter, and to the men I served with, that I would never let the world forget what honor looks like." His voice grew stronger, each word carrying years of burden and hope. "Don't thank me. Thank the ones who never made it home." The crowd was still, some fighting back tears, others openly weeping. A veteran in the honor guard stepped forward and saluted. Strangers in the terminal joined, some with awkward, trembling hands, others simply placing hands over hearts. Suddenly, the big screen overhead flickered, a live feed of social media. Tweets and comments poured in, thousands of people from across the country and around the world demanding dignity for those who had served. Hashtags like "Stokta honor our veterans" and "We see you" trended higher than breaking news. A spontaneous round of applause swelled, then became a standing ovation, the kind that doesn't fade but grows, until even the staff and security joined in. For Robert, the noise faded into a low, steady hum. In the clamor, he felt the presence of the old friends he'd lost, the wife who believed in him, and the granddaughter who'd given him courage to step into the light one last time. The humiliation was gone, burned away by collective memory, and the sudden, unstoppable force of gratitude. As the echoes of applause finally faded, the airport seemed changed, a rare hush settling over travelers and staff. People who'd once hurried by Robert now lingered. Strangers, moved by the spectacle, came forward. Some shook his hand, some merely nodded. Others, caught in the rawness of the moment, said nothing at all. Even the airline staff, their uniforms no longer a shield, bowed their heads and offered quiet apologies. The young security guard who had earlier escorted Robert from the priority line approached, his face flushed with regret. "Sir, I'm sorry for what happened. I should have seen you." Robert simply placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that forgave, but did not absolve. The guard looked away, blinking back tears. A familiar face emerged from the crowd. It was the old janitor, Walter, Robert's comrade from a war few remembered. Walter, always careful to stay invisible, now walked into the light, standing tall beside his friend. With the confidence born of a lifetime's silence, Walter snapped a sharp salute. "Never too late, brother," he said, voice breaking. The two old soldiers stood for a moment, silent among the shifting crowd, the air around them charged with memories both painful and proud. Elsewhere in the terminal, the VIP passenger who had earlier insulted Robert hesitated, then approached. For a moment, words failed him. At last, he simply offered his own seat, eyes lowered in genuine contrition. Robert nodded, his forgiveness unspoken but real. Emily arrived, breathless and trembling, her eyes searching for her grandfather. She spotted him, surrounded, honored, and ran to embrace him. In her arms, Robert finally allowed himself to exhale, the tension and loneliness of the day melting away. Emily pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "You don't need to be a national hero. You'll always be our hero." All around them, travelers watched. Some recorded, some wept openly. Some simply stood in awe of the quiet grace that filled the space where shame had once lived. A new mood swept the terminal, something between reverence and relief. For the first time all day, Robert felt the burden lift from his shoulders, replaced by a gentle, unfamiliar lightness. A flight attendant approached, her hands full with fresh boarding passes. "Mr. Ellison, your seat has been restored to first class, and there's a special note. Your granddaughter will be joining you up front if you'd like." Emily's eyes widened in surprise. Robert took the tickets with a grateful nod, a quiet smile spreading across his face. His chest ached, not from old wounds, but from a swelling gratitude. For the first time, the weight felt shared. The announcement rang out over the intercom. "All passengers, please join us in a minute of silence to honor veterans everywhere." The whole airport stilled. Travelers stood, hats removed, screens darkened as staff, pilots, children, and strangers bowed their heads. For 60 measured seconds, the noise of the world paused. And in that silence, memories rose. A montage of young men and women in faded photos. The echo of voices lost. The meaning of sacrifice unforgotten. When the silence broke, it was not with the rush of usual routine, but with soft applause and the unhurried return of life to the terminal. staff helped Robert and Emily to the gate. There, the CEO met them one last time, presenting Robert with a new card. Any flight, any time, anywhere in the world, you're always welcome. Behind her, a team of staff revealed a sign, "Heroes welcome here." Walter, the old friend, stayed at the edge of the crowd. Before Robert boarded, he turned and locked eyes with Walter, offering a final salute. It needed no words. Everything they had ever fought for, everything they had lost and gained, was contained in that simple gesture. As Robert and Emily settled into their seats, a wave of messages poured in. Texts from comrades, letters from strangers, tributes from people who had watched the story unfold online. Their screens were filled with the Sekakar heroes deserve respect and photos of small acts of gratitude from airports around the country. Robert gazed out the window as the plane taxied away. He wasn't thinking about headlines or hashtags, but of Marion's last promise and the invisible company of those who never came home. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that perhaps, after all this time, the world was ready to remember. The sky outside Glenford shimmered with the first hints of dawn as Robert's plane climbed above the city. In the quiet of first class, Emily rested her head on his shoulder, her hand finding his. The cabin was peaceful, the rest of the world locked out for a moment. Robert stared at the clouds below, letting himself breathe in the enormity of the day. He felt every ache in his bones, every scar from a life lived in service. But for the first time in years, the pain did not feel like a punishment. It felt like proof. Proof that he was still here. Proof that, in some unexpected way, he had made a difference. His phone vibrated. Messages from strangers and friends alike kept pouring in, dozens, then hundreds. Veterans, nurses, students, parents, each reaching out with a word, a salute, a memory. Some told him about their own lost loved ones. Some simply wrote, "Thank you for reminding us." News alerts flashed across his screen, stories about the New Heroes Desk Initiative, the minute of silence observed nationwide, the ripple of compassion that had started with a single small act of kindness. Emily, smiling through tears, read aloud a letter from a young soldier stationed overseas. "You made us all proud today, sir. Not just for what you did in the war, but for standing tall now, when it mattered for all of us." Robert listened, his gaze distant, as if seeing beyond the clouds to the men and women who had marched with him through history. He didn't need interviews, didn't need the spotlight. When a producer called to offer him a televised platform to tell his side, he gently refused. "It's not my story alone," he said quietly. "It belongs to everyone who's ever worn the uniform, and to those who waited for them to come home. Let them be remembered, too." As the jet arced toward the nation's capital, Robert let his eyes drift shut. He remembered Marion's words, "Remind them what honor looks like." He thought of the little girl with the badge, the trembling security guard, the sea of strangers who had, for just one day, decided to pay attention. Sometimes change came not with a roar, but with a quiet chorus of ordinary voices rising together. He pressed Emily's hand and watched as the airport below faded into a patchwork of memory. In his mind, he saw the faces of men and women he'd served with, some gone, some still fighting unseen battles. Their sacrifices lived on in the silence, in the badge now tucked into his jacket, in the promise he had kept. The world would move on, of course. Tomorrow, the news cycle would shift, but Robert's story would echo, if only for a little while, in the hearts of those who had witnessed it. The hashtags kept trending. Schools and offices across the country paused to honor the unseen. Veterans groups saw an influx of volunteers. At airports, signs began to appear. Heroes welcome here. And staff were trained to recognize not just tickets, but stories. And for anyone listening, a question lingered. How many times have we walked past a hero and never known? How many moments of grace have we missed, simply by looking away? So before the credits roll, let me ask you, have you ever seen someone's quiet dignity go unnoticed? What would you do if it was your parent, your neighbor, your friend? If this story moved you, share it. Leave a comment below about the unsung heroes in your life. Subscribe if you believe in telling stories that remind us all. Gratitude is a living thing. And sometimes, the greatest honors are the ones given by ordinary people when no one is watching. Because true respect isn't found in headlines, but in how we treat those who walk beside us every single day. And so, as the story of Robert Ellison faded from the headlines and hashtags, its echoes lingered in the lives it touched. Airports around the country saw small changes. More smiles at the check-in counter. More patience for the elderly and the weary. More questions asked about medals and service. Some staff printed out Robert's story and posted it in break rooms, a quiet reminder to see the person behind the boarding pass. Emily, inspired by the outpouring of gratitude, started volunteering with local veterans organizations. She led her hospital in organizing monthly events to honor those who'd served, bringing together young families and old soldiers, building bridges where there had once been only silence. As for Robert, he continued to walk the quiet streets of Glenford, his limp a little lighter, his heart more at peace. He still missed Marion. He still woke sometimes from dreams filled with faces he'd lost. But he also found comfort in small gestures, a nod from a stranger, a thank you from a cashier, a homemade card from a neighborhood child. Years from now, someone will find that faded blue paper badge tucked in his wallet and ask what it meant. And Emily, or maybe one of her children, will say, "That belonged to a hero who never wanted to be noticed. But one day, the world finally saw him." So let's not wait for another story to go viral before we show respect. Let's not leave our gratitude unsaid. Because the real honor is not in medals or ceremonies. It's in remembering every single day that the person next to us may carry a story of sacrifice we'll never fully understand. If you believe every hero deserves to be seen, please subscribe, leave your story in the comments, and share this video with someone you care about. Let's fill the world with living gratitude, one real story at a time. Thank you for watching, and thank you for remembering.